Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I guess we can start soon. Welcome to Indigo Call number 2. And this is the last lecture call for the year. So it's very beautiful. And I'm really grateful um, that we were able to do this. Um, yeah, we're doing a 10-day training in Maya at the moment. So we are on day 7 going on 8. So it's pretty interesting to be closing the training in Maya as we close the 1 year. And we've also been doing a 3-month journey with a smaller group. So balancing all these curriculums have been really interesting in my brain, how to hold the really big picture. So I'd be really interested to see where this last call goes. There are a lot of changes happening here in Palawan and in different parts of the world. We had a really interesting day yesterday where we went over a new platform. If I could just share my screen, I think it'd be interesting to go over it today. So when I say platform, um, going over platforms, music production platforms like Logic Pro. Talked a lot about My Noise and the DJ Pro. And because of the new iteration of My Noise, we've been shopping around for what would innerdance be looking like in the next years. So I've been using this particular app called Koala. And we've been conducting these trainings in Palawan or in different parts of the world, these live-long trainings. And I know what it's like to be teaching or suggesting these different platforms, either on a MacBook, a Windows, Android, or iOS. And I really had an interesting time going over this sampler with the crowd of about 20 people in Maya today. It was actually really amazing. It was so beautiful. So I want to go over this later on, and I feel this would present another style or form of inner dance, like into the next year or the next years. I feel it brings together DJ Pro and My Noise and Spotify and Logic Pro and everything here all in one space. And it I'm really quite excited. I normally don't play with my platforms for too long, but I'm having like a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I really love it. So before that, um, I'd like to go over the Indigo notes. I'm not going to go over these slides that we went over in the last Zoom call. So I suggest to you that you could look at it. It's particularly interested in the topic of cognitive resonance through what is cognitive dissonance. And that conversation can run very deep. And I'm really touched by this topic of what is inner dance as a cognitive resonance. So we had a chance to once again go through like the mandala and the colors. And yeah, there's a lot there. Uh, we've been particularly going over an understanding of the 12 stages. Welcome. Hi, Tom. Through um, through this, the the different stages of the birthing of a nerve cell or a brain cell, and the migration of the cell, differentiation of the cell, the growing out of a cell, and the growing of connections between these neurons, as well as the death, the dying of a cell, the pruning of unnecessary synapses, and then the strengthening of a synapse through the growing of myelin. This is strong spelling. It's myelinogenesis. Um, so yeah, maybe we can bring this up again if it comes up. Um, but particularly, I want to go over how inner dance is both a learning and an unlearning process. So this has been one of the most difficult and productive years of my life. So thank you for being in this journey with us, with me, like, with you. It's been such a year, stretching out a conversation, inner dance across the whole year, and having to do most of the conversations during the odd hours of the night, like getting up at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock and having to be very wide awake. It's really done something to my brain. It feels like I organized my whole brain throughout this year in the most ridiculous ways. It's been really crazy. And I think that's like with you. So I just open the screen. So I know it's there, but still using the PowerPoint. All right, so I think trying to understand what happens in the basis of the neuron or the brain, it is interesting to think about when we bring up what is learning. Um, and it's really interesting to look at that from a neural theory. I find that there's so much to learn about inner dance when we understand how uh, that happens in the neural basis. So then to bring this up, and I've been experimenting with these in the past years in trainings. So an action potential is basically a rapid synchronization of a spike train of action potential. So it's not just an action potential, it's pretty much like a spike train of all of these possible, like trillions or quadrillion connections, uh, networking all the brain cells. Inner dance is the spike train of action potentials, like sudden synchronization happens. And to describe that, don't know if we've talked about this in a previous Zoom call. So an action potential basically is a depolarization of the cellular membrane, meaning there's, the electricity quotient of a nerve cell that can like depolarize, which is the spiking upwards, and then there's a hyperpolarization of the charge of the the membrane, the cell station. And then it goes back to the resting potential, only to once again depolarize and then hyperpolarize and then rest once again. So I guess this is what people might mean when they use the word activate. And they say there's an activation happening, an activation of inner dance, an activation of the Kundalini. And I guess we're interested in how these spike trains achieve not just like the movement of the body and the emotions that do tend to happen whenever action potentials arise. Because we are in the Indigo, we'd probably be interested in how these action potentials lead to modalities of intelligence and insight and ideas. And I guess these eyes, the like insight, especially insight doesn't happen uh in absence of the movement and the emotions. Like our intelligence are guided by how our feelings, our emotional states, even our metabolism, our immunity, our really body-based levels still lead to how we conceptualize our ideas, how we uh, learn to think. I mean, the project in Indigo is to uh, maybe in a way understand how do we build a thought? How do we construct a thought? What is like thought construction? So you can imagine, like in the brain, you have these gazillion construction workers, trillions, billions of construction workers, and they all are working together in order to build like a thought. So I thought it would be interesting to look at that from a really basic level. It starts with the action potential, then there's a spike train, and then next thing you know, all these connections build together. So I'm really interested basically in like how that happens. So in the neural theories of learning, and this is something that might have come up in previous Zoom calls as well. There's Hebbian learning, and maybe we can just review these throughout the next slides. There's spike timing dependent plasticity. I bring this up, and I'm not scared to bring these up because they describe some of the techniques that we conduct in, especially the way we use music. It could also be related to how we hold or touch people, and as well how we use words. I want to once again bring up long-term potentiation and long-term depression. I don't think an Indigo conversation in the wiki would be complete without understanding how learning actually happens in the neurological level, because the neurological level is the level of the concrete. We can think of ideas conceptually, but it would rather be interesting to understand how does that happen, like actually, like materially, physically, deterministically, causally. So if this doesn't become feasible within a one Zoom call, we could keep looking at this as a community over the long term. And when I bring up these apps, like the noise app would have particular ways of conducting uh neural learning. So with the DJ Pro, and so with Koala has its own levels. And I think the deeper we go, oh sorry, this one, the deeper we go into these platforms, we would achieve greater Hebbian STDP, LTP, and LTD learning styles. I really do believe that what we're doing is we're matching basically like the things that we're understanding, like what we know, more or less matches like what we're doing, what we do. What we know is what we do, and what we practice is what we understand. So when we bring up these particular um apps or programs, the apps is really a mirror of the brain. What we're programming is the brain. Okay, so um, go back to that. So conceptual metaphor, I'm not having the time to go too much into this. Let me just describe why it's important, and I'm guessing we've taken this up before anyway. A conceptual metaphor, or conceptual metaphor in general, is important as it basically describes how connections are made between particular domains, what are called conceptual domains, what often people might call like ideas. They are kingdoms, information kingdoms called conceptual domains. And there's usually like a movement. That's what's important, I think, about metaphor. It establishes that there's a directionality, there's a movement um, between these domains. And it could be possibly explained that the very movements of the body, so it's not just the movement from a domain to a domain, like an idea to another idea, like time is money, love is a journey, life is war. The movements of the body, in fact, like even the movements, or maybe especially the movements in inner dance, are connotative of these actual movements between conceptual domains. And the basic tenet in the cognitive sciences is that movement happens between the concrete and the abstract. Okay, so the sensorial experiences of the body leads to the abstract ideas that are like inside the mind, which are internal representations of what are objects like in the world. Um, all right, so moving on. So directionality has to do with that. Usually there are two basic roles conceptual domains play. There's usually a source and there's a target domain. And there is a principle of unidirectionality. Write that down. So when there are these synapses connecting a new, like let's say neuron number one to neuron number two, the direction is uni. So here you have messages being transmitted from this is the axon hillock, and then here's the axon, and the axon is covered by these myelin sheaths. And the synapse would be this box right here where the axon terminal would branch out into these particular smaller axons, and it would meet the dendrite, which is the receiving part of the neuron, and the synapse is this meeting point. It's the space or gap in between. So that's how information is sent. That's how a body is energized. That's how an emotion is activated. And a mapping is basically however way like a source domain tracks onto like a target domain. So this bears some explanations as to what happens in inner dance. So in the trainings that I do, I would go over these three basic interesting levels of a thought. Spatial primitives, image schemas, and schematic integrations. Let me, let me describe that. Um, so a spatial primitive would be more or less the most basic building block. It's a building block that allow us to understand what we perceive. So an example would be like a container as a building block. So when you watch very small humans, like babies or toddlers get a container. This is really my favorite example. When they get the container like a cup, and when they start to put things inside the cup, they are learning a spatial primitive, which is like a spatial primitive would be the container. And then, all these things inside the container, these are stuff. So that's another spatial primitive, like a thing. So other examples could the source. So let's say a baby learns to move, and the baby discovers that when the baby moves, they basically leave the origins or the source, and they um, go through a pathway, or more simply a path. And when they stop moving, they basically arrive at a particular space, the destination or the goal. So here you have three spatial primitives. Okay, why am I talking about this? This is how a baby basically thinks. And we've discussed quite a bit how babies, how inner dance participants are becoming babies. So when the inner dance participant is moving, they're moving in a non-thinking way, and they're accessing the building blocks of a thought. So sometimes even when you're crying, screaming, or feeling energized, very often you're not actually thinking much. It's because you're thinking at the very, very root level of a thought, and you're dealing with spatial primitives. So when you watch people like taking things out of their body, or you know putting things in, they're experiencing their body as a container. And one interesting thing to look at would be, um, we had all these discussions regarding the like this word transmission versus resonance. Um, the conduit metaphor is basically almost the same as the container metaphor, and it's one of the first, if not the first. It's one of the first metaphors a baby has to learn. So then people speak or write as if they insert their mental contents, which could be like feelings, thoughts, concepts, ideas, meanings, into containers, which are words, phrases, sentences, whose contents are then extracted by listeners and readers. This is already an advanced definition of the transmission metaphor. To baby, um, container metaphor it isn't even like you put stuff or meanings into words. It's literally like putting things inside the cup, which later would translate, which could lend to how we understand that words contain meanings. The baby first had to experience the relationship between the cup and the thing, and then later that would be made more abstract, so that words now contain their definitions, their meanings. So what you're looking at down here uh, are spatial primitives coming together. And when they come together, what you have now is an image schema. And an image schema is a representation of simple spatial events that use the primitives. So it could be source path goal, it could be like the thing into the container. That is already a schematic, and that's how toddlers begin to think. Babies begin with container as opposed to the thing. They experience that apart, and then when they bring that together, that becomes an image schema. And I mean, image schemas are mostly image based, so they are what you might call exactly this. They are spatial. So how the question was, how do you build like a thought, right? How do you construct a thought? So I'm explaining it here to the cognitive sciences, which is very inner dance. Um, you take a spatial primitive, and then you take another one, and then you combine that into an image schema. Now, when you take an image schema along with maybe other image schemas, schemas. Some people might say it, maybe it depends on the country. When you put your like feelings, when you project your own feelings and any other non-spatial perceptions, when you project these into these, all right, I mean the sounds, the touch, they can evoke spatial primitives, movements can bring image schemas together, words can help to project our feelings or meanings into these schematic uh they start to integrate, and that's how we form a thought. Basically a thought is all of these together. It's basically spatial primitives, image schemas, and schematic integrations. That's how you build a thought. So if you wanted to unbuild a thought, what you do is um, you separate the three, basically, or you go back to the spatial primitive. Gives us another, uh, sorry, it gives us another texture to when we say, like, what does it mean when we're becoming primitive? You know, it doesn't just mean we're becoming indigenous or caveman or primordial or Neanderthal. It simply means that we're experiencing things from a very baby-like, very basic, very pure, you know, building block level of thought. And that's why people don't really remember their memories prior to the age of 3 or 2. It takes a tremendous amount of work to be able to remember that. Because what we have done by the age of 3 is we have integrated the schematics through the projections that we're able to place upon the image schemas that the toddler had achieved. All right, so that's interesting. When I conduct basically then my trainings, and I don't want to go so deep into that anymore today because I am hesitant to suggest the new noise app. So if you have the old version, you those in this 12-month training, because you have access to the ability to hold uh, 5 noises at a time, which is what had made this particularly. Okay, I'm gonna shut this down because I don't want to trigger the sounds. The new noise app doesn't have that ability anymore. So you can play these sounds, but they're usually just one at a time. And what made this old version powerful is this multi-section, and that's not there anymore. So we basically have to change our trainings now. But in the trainings that I've been doing in the last years, I would actually match a particular image schema. So this is an image schema, or this is a primitive. This is an image schema. This is a primitive image schema. And I would give examples of particular noises in the noise app. So I forgot to erase this. So to signify equilibrium, I would play osmosis or home again. Like to signify how I would evoke verticality, I would turn on I would play to the audience like Shepherd Madness. If you're interested in that, I could easily just probably share a past Zoom call that I had done with the 3-month group and so on and so forth, where I haven't erased my suggestions for these. These are more schemas. So here, for example, is a spatial primitive, and then here's an image schema, and so on and so forth. You get the gist. I just wanted to run by that just so I'm not skipping anything. So this is really where I want to start out. So for me, learning is remembering, and I want to talk about what is memory in the inner dance. I really don't like self-repeating even after these trainings. I am constantly looking for the space to talk about things I haven't had the space for. So today I want to focus on the concept of reverberation, maybe alongside or versus activation. Although reverberation is what remains after an activation is gone. Basically, a reverberation is a residue of the activation. And when we study activation throughout sleep and wake, or maybe wake, non-REM, and then REM sleep, we would start to understand like learning. So maybe learning more in terms of like when does learning happen? And we have to be just really basic in understanding that learning is remembering, meaning when you learn, it means that you are retaining an idea, a concept. Or when you put these concepts and ideas together, what you have is like an insight. It's more difficult to remember an insight. When you wake up from a dream, it's not easy to remember a dream because you're not really looking at an idea when you're dreaming. You're looking normally at a whole network of ideas. And that's why it's hard to remember because your wake-based brain can only hold a certain number of bits and pieces of information. It's usually in the information processing model, it's plus minus 7. So it's basically 5 to 9 bits of information. When I said like this year is one of the most difficult and productive years of my life, it's because I had to increase my information processing system so that I'm able to hold much more than 7 or maximum 9, having to hold curriculum for these random talks I have to do once in a while, and then the 1 year, and then the 3 months, and then the 10-day trainings. Uh, so yeah, I want to go into memory, and then I want to go into the role patterns, repetitions, oscillations play in how we encode the outside world into the inside world. Okay, so let's stay with these basic ideas and start to map out um, how does learning happen. And definitely, if you have been with us throughout the year, or some of you have been with us within 6 months, you have definitely been observing your own inner dance brain or energy brain, Kundalini brain, learning heavily. There's some dense learning happening, like definitely like big amounts of neuroplasticity is at work in your brain. I think it's very important to bring in the super familiar inner dance playlist system, which is a metaphor for the 5 stages of sleep or the 12 stages of the awakening process. Um, and basically, there's a certain type of learning that happens here in what we should just call for now slow wave sleep. It's easier to understand than M3 or the disintegration process. So REM could very well be from stage number 5, which is awakening, all the way to, just take it all the way to stage number 11, which is a unitive state. So let's just take for granted that for us, that's REM, whether it be like sleep REM or sleep or REM awake. There's a different type of learning basically that happens in slow wave sleep, and there's a different type of learning that happens in REM state. I think to be able to understand this, it becomes rather key to take this up again. We would have to wonder, when are we, uh, have to press play. When are we generating new neurons? When are we birthing new brain cells? When are we migrating those brain cells? Which is probably all the time. When are we differentiating a cell so that it knows if it's going to be a part of the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, the amygdala, the frontal cortex? And then how does that mature? How does that grow old? When do we interconnect the brain cells, and then how do we kill cells that we don't need? The word for cell death is apoptosis. So I think if you drink too much, you would kill brain cells, supposedly. But apoptosis, that's the wrong spelling, isn't it? No, that's not gonna work. There. Okay, apoptosis. Um, innerdance has a habit of killing brain cells, which isn't always a bad thing. Pruning would be getting rid of synapses that we don't need. So there are certain areas of concern where we would undergo an overproduction. I don't think you can overproduce brain cells, but you can definitely overproduce synapses. And inner dance and the Kundalini awakening thing can lead to a synaptic overproduction. So, in order to make sure we don't suffer from the effects of having too many connections, we would need to prune or cut a lot of the synapses that we don't need. And that is how learning happens. And then lastly, we would then strengthen the connection that we had chosen. And that's what synaptogenesis is about. Okay, so where were we? All right, so in the past Zoom call, we were going over how most likely synaptogenesis happens often when we move our bodies. That in effect is part of Hebbian learning. When you move a part of your body, you basically create a spike train. In other words, you are firing neurons. And when you fire neurons at the same time, they basically would wire together. They would create a synapse. Um, where I, where was that like helpful image that we can refer to? Like here, when let's say if you fire this up, and if you fire this up, and what you're really firing is the membrane. It would be the membrane potential. There would be these calcium or potassium ions that would either leave or enter the cell, therefore shifting the electrical charge. And when you do that, the synapsing would happen. And depending on the timing, if the this would be the post synapse, because remember, this is unidirectional. This is the pre-synapse. Depending if this fires first or this fires first, you would either experience a long-term potential or a long-term depression. Long-term potential or a long-term depression. And this, in the neurosciences, help to explain how a trauma can occur. Like when you do not fire certain connections, possible connections, because you experience pain or a certain, like fear, then you will not potentiate. So actually, this is wrong. The trauma should be here. Long-term depression explains how you would depress possible connections between these neurons. But when you activate or excite that's when you're using that synapse. You would not just keep firing and wiring that, you would later strengthen that through the myelination of the axon. Um, okay, so Hebbian learning describes how the more you fire, the more you create wiring. Long-term potentiation describes and long-term depression describes certain directionality depending on like what you fired first before or after the synapse. And that's what spike timing dependent plasticity means. So if you're interested in that, just look it up later on. If you find the material a little bit too hectic for you, then either use AI or we can have another Zoom call later on to just uncover like what those mean. So for studying learning, um, a lot of the synapses are also generated in like slow wave sleep and maybe even a non-REM one or two. There are loads of synapses that are generated, but actually there are also so let's say synapse. There are a load of synapses that are generated, but we also have to understand that when you're like, generating a lot of synapses, you're also eliminating a lot of these connections. So it's almost like you're shopping. Like, this is how transformation could occur because uh, when you decide to let go, the word was to eliminate connections. What are you doing? You're letting go of old connections that you don't want anymore. So when you're generating new synapses, that's how you generate new motor programs or and then that would lead to new thought systems, new belief structures. So this is happening all the time. So it is in REM state that these synapses would then be so let's say it's the one that the ones that you choose that's going to happen further in REM state. So in REM state um there would be a strengthening of the connections that you did end up where is that? I think it was there. No, we removed it. It was like in a slide. The no, we erased it actually. The neurons that you ended up wiring because you fire them together. If you wire them, it is in the REM state that you would strengthen those connections. And as you know, what is interesting about REM state is like when you're dreaming, particularly in REM, your motor programs are working even though you're not moving your body. Like when you're dreaming, you have paralyzed your body in the SWS. And then you are, in fact, imagining that you're moving across space while you are dreaming, but mostly through your imagination. Like when you're moving your body in sleep, it's usually happening in non-REM 2 sleep. So this could possibly be one of the reasons why we dream at all, either while we're sleeping or while we are awake. It's possibly to strengthen the connections that we are making a preference for. Um, okay, so I want to review something important before moving on to other slides. In previous calls, we went over some very important ideas relating to the theta rhythm, which would be extremely practical when you study playlisting. So theta rhythm would be a high amplitude but slow not so frequent, meaning less frequency rhythm from 4 to 7 hertz, that would be able to do gating of high or fast rhythms, normally in the gamma band, the gamma power. So it's theta that allows for the repetition of patterns, that allows for long-term potentiation, which is synonymous with how synapses are strengthened. Okay. Let's make this a little bit coherent first. Like we have to connect this to why are we even talking about this? Like in inner dance or a lot of these other stuff people are doing across the world that have different names. When you tend to increase the action potentials that are now synchronized, spike trains, spreading of activation of action potentials across the whole brain. Um, we are basically like synapsing because of that, because that's what electricity can do. We are also conducting neurogenesis. We're birthing new cells. The thing is we're overproducing these synapses. So let's put a big arrow there to be connotative. And because synapsing is very expensive, it takes a tremendous amount of oxygen and blood and energy, chemistries, neurotransmitters, hormones in order to synapse. We can only afford so much. And that's why we need to keep moving back from excitation and then rest periods, excitation, rest periods. Because of the sheer expense, it's costly. It you have to spend a lot of your energy. And so that's why there are oscillations to begin with, rising and falling, rising and falling. Okay. Um, so basically, like memory is consolidated somewhere here. So especially if you look at this, right? Slow wave sleep or general, it could even be general non-REM sleep, but especially slow wave sleep. What is primarily happening there is active memories are needing to be transitioned to latent or passive ones, latent memories. So as we know, active memories would be short-term memories. It's basically the memories that happen during the day, and latent memories would be long-term memories. So basically, let's say you have I- I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys watched this movie. Forget like yeah, it's Inside Out, which just had the second part just come out a couple of months ago. And you remember these emotions would be handling these memories of I forgot the name of the child. And then they would take, let's say, a memory, and then they would slip that like into a some kind of tube, and then it would go into this whole like a kingdom, this whole universe of different types of experiences, like categories upon which memories could be placed upon, like different colors and different. Um, so it actually is quite accurate. Like when they were writing the script for that movie, they were like consulting with neuroscientists and psychologists and whatnot. All right. So slow wave sleep is basically when this is happening. And for that to happen here, there is a very huge need for there to be delta and the occasional theta brainwave power. In other words, if there is a reduction of theta or delta, basically it becomes very, very difficult to hold memories. So when people aren't able to remember so much, it's because they are lacking theta and delta power during that particular time in like at night. Um, so when like scientists, for example, experiment with participants, they would basically reduce the theta delta power by controlling the brain through electrodes or just waking people up right when they're starting to sense that theta is beginning to show up, particularly in the if here's an exercise in theta rhythm for you to remember. Do you remember the part of the brain that sends out theta rhythm? It's a part of the limbic system. It's the septal area of the limbic system that would then communicate with the hippocampus and the I'm just demonstrating memory just to help you, just to activate your hippocampus and your entorhinal cortex, just so we remember where is memory and what is the GPS of the brain, which also has spatial recognition because of the place cells and the grid cells. It's these two areas that help you to understand where you are located, uh, where you are. But when you do go to sleep, there's a much deeper sense of locality. Um, Maybe even the opposite of locality. This is locality is usually connotative of a one particular place. So that's basically what's happening in slow wave sleep. Uh, that's one of the reasons why we are sleeping. It's to consolidate the shorter memories, and then once again, like REM state is when you would strengthen these memories in many ways. That's more active remembrance. Okay, so I guess you could move on. Where I think so we're past this. Let's move on to this. I don't have too many slides actually, because I wanted to focus on the sampler app, the Koala app. So I really love this picture. Um, we're growing up and then we're growing down almost. It's like it's not just like an upward verticality. There's this directionality. So um, when babies are born, uh, for babies, the self, let's maybe call it the autobiographical self, would be quite like empty. The arrow would be down. Uh, so the sense of the past is very much not there, which means the potentiality for the future is very much potentially, you have all the way to go. The future is very potent. To the baby, the kind of memory that is very present would be the phylogenetic self, which is just to say the memories of the species is basically that which dominates. So there is still a certain type of pastness. You still have remembrance. It's just a phylogenetic past. And this doesn't need to be just a human baby. The animal and the plant baby much more so remembers the phylogenetic past. Even chemical babies, uh, like the elements, they remember what they are. Um, so the potential for new memories then by default in adults would be low, primarily because um, the adult has, you know, the autobiographical self of the adult is like full. So the future would then be not so interesting. New stimuli is not so interesting to the adult or especially the old human, um, because they are filled with the autobiographical self. And this totally like situates why inner dance becomes important. Like this totally justifies why we are doing what we're doing. Because if we can bring people back to like this time perception, like future would be, no matter how old you are, it could still be way ahead of you. But for that to equal out, like the autobiographical self momentarily needs to go down. So in many ways, probably we are shifting this. Like I am a testament to this, just in the way that I have had to wake up in the odd hours of the evening of the clock. You know, I would be waking up at midnight, 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. to prepare for these calls. I basically had to rewire my own brain so that if I am usually strengthening my synapses or birthing new synapses at a particular time, I basically had to force myself to do that while I am awake when I should be sleeping. So I totally would break my circadian patterns, which is really, really, it was really, really crazy actually to have been inside my brain during the last few months. Um, for the adult, the older you get, basically, there are reasons why we don't sleep as much. And our brains then would have much lesser fluidity or nimbleness. Like it's not so plastic anymore. Like we're not, birthing new neurons, we're not adding more synapses. And that's why we're not sleeping as much because we're not actually consolidating so much memories because we don't have the space for new memories. We can't really remember so much. Why is that? Like when we're babies, what babies need to do is this. Um, what does it mean to transform active memories? It could be really basic active memories, like still spatial primitives, image schemas, um, going into the building of a psyche or an ego. So active memories into latent memories, which should be remember the universe of memories, like transferring that to here. How you're able to make that, let's call it the domain, because we use that word like a domain. I'd like to use the word kingdom. Um, to be able to do that, you need to be able to um, encode representations of all these things that are happening in the world, whether it be like people are there in the world, there are events, there are places, there are, let's say, situations, and so on and so forth. Um, okay, like that, which is to do with time and space and so on and so forth. You're basically taking the outside world. This is what babies have. They're usually very externalized. They don't think inside. They think very externally, authentically. They express, sort of like how bodies are in the inner dance. And for you to be able to think inside, you need the latent memories, where memories are now encased in a simultaneous synchronicity, where all of these memories are now living together, not one at a time, but simultaneously, in a simultaneous synchronicity. Um, so that's what memes are, anyways, that fall on top of the genes. Memes are those encoded representations of people, events, places, situations, and these need to then be integrated into the entire nervous system, which are in a way like simplified into bits and pieces, subject to one's interpretation, systems of interpretation. So they may be stagnated, but they are also very, very plastic still and very fluid, depending on how we are mixing up. Uh, Interpretation would be more the decoding process of what had been encoded in the SWS. A decoding can happen in REM state, and REM state in sleep is, in a way, almost the same, anyhow, as like wake state consciousness to begin with. Because when you do measure the brain while it's awake, I mean, asleep and in a REM state, it looks like it's awake. It's just that wake state is a lot less um, like wide in scope as REM state, but there are enough similarities, and you are constantly decoding what had been encoded, like while we are in SWS. Um, so yeah, yeah, trying to remember what my face is. So I don't actually have much more to say. I think we can start to build from this already. Like in the last Zoom call, um, dear Radia spoke about like light language, and light language is a way of like um uncombining, recombining, decombining the uh sound units that's basically held by rules together. I don't know if you remember what it was like to write these papers in school. It could be like a thesis paper or like some kind of homework in school. So let's say you're asked to write an essay. What the teachers need to do in order to make sure that you're not just copying this from a book, and especially now, like you're not just copying it out of Wikipedia, or you didn't just ask AI or like ChatGPT to write your essay or your thesis. I'm pretty sure many students, if not most, are just doing that today. What they would ask you to do to make sure that you actually learned um what you're learning is to paraphrase, which means in other words, it, to make sure that you learned it, you have to be able to explain the concepts not verbatim, not word for word, exactly as maybe Kant or Hegel or the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible or whatever. You have to be able to explain it in other words. So that is what allows learning to be active learning as opposed to be passive learning, where you're just absorbing what you're reading and you're not transforming it inside you. You're not performing a structuralism. I really just want to explain that this is, in a way, definitely what playlisting is about. When you are able to break or deconstruct the rules that allow letters words, sentences to be combined in a way that follows syntactical rules or grammatical rules, then you are already playlisting. And if we were to look at the if we were to look at this really beautiful artistic, this belongs in a museum, this thing that's made by Tom. Um, it's really interesting how we are definitely experimenting with this. Like I feel that light language more or less happens like somewhere here, like in this particular zone here. Um, because if this is where like transduction or encoding happens, and then this is where reinterpretation happens. We have to be able to hold this level of intelligence, this l- uh, basis for combination, our ability to recombine things in time, which isn't just going to be the forward motion of time, but the retrocausal motion of time, and maybe like all sorts of directions everywhere. Time becomes like this asterisk, like almost setting off in all sorts of directions. Like for me, that's what REM state does, and that's a much higher form of intelligence, insights, or visioning. Uh, I don't know if you remember, but we have studied quite frequently how serotonin and norepinephrine or noradrenaline would be almost absent during REM state because serotonin and noradrenaline creates attachment levels that do not allow you to spread your action potentials out across regions of the brain omnidirectionally. Like there would still be a kind of linearity if serotonin and noradrenaline levels were high, because that is connotative of our attachments to people in the world, and also um, fight or flight, like just trying too hard, being in a space of wanting and attaching, even on an emotional level. So I think what we are being asked to do is knowing that we are always doing this all the time anyway. We don't have to worry about it because we're always doing it all the time, like during non-REM and REM state. But I think what we're being forced to do now is to be able to do this like awake, to be able to uncombine and recombine, to be able to access the associations, it's called like semantic priming, to be able to see connections that we don't see when we are awake. All right. So this is when I would definitely then be interested in going into the apps. Because say if you studied the DJ app and then you were shopping around for the sound units you would be working with your, let's say, the DJ app. I actually built a last slide out of this. I may as well use it so that it sounds worth it. Say you were working out of the DJ Pro system, the things that you're going to be combining would be songs, selecting songs and then combining songs together, either in time or space, in a sequence or in layers. With my noise, it would be um, obviously like that one, noise or frequencies, or if there were musical elements there would be loops of rhythmic or harmonic elements. So I'm really interested in this koala thing. Like I really had fun with it, like myself over the last days. I really feel that it brings DJ Pro and frequencies into systematicity. Now, a lot of people are still working Spotify, and like the ones that I uploaded, you're not even like making choices anymore. You just have a complete playlist that's already built out. And I wouldn't encourage people to just get stuck with that, because you would be basically escaping what many of the original inner dance facilitators had going for them when we were using iTunes and then DJ app, and some people would use Logic Pro or Ableton. The ability to course through song selection and song combination did something to ourselves. So when I am bringing this up now, I'm not just talking about the nervous systems undergoing changes in your participants. I'm now talking about the space holder, him or herself. I'm really interested in what is happening in our brains. So when I bring up these, I'm not going to this in particular because the way I see it, any strong space holder or facilitator out there, your participants will want to do what you're doing. Because if they just keep laying down, they're basically like encoding, but they're not decoding. They're not going into an active learning process. And because the um this old app isn't available anymore, and you can't really use it to layer things, the new app doesn't allow that. Um, Thinking about the future, knowing that you yourself would be, like a lot of facilitators would later on be indoctrinating their own participants into a more active learning process, not just passive. These would be interesting to understand what is happening in your own brain, like my own brain and the brain of others, that would lead to higher forms of intelligence. What I do is I basically go through my this is my playlist. Like when I conduct um conversations in each color, this is what I would mix and match. I wouldn't be mixing and matching songs. That's what people are doing in the workshops. Because I'm conducting these trainings, I'm basically training trainers, training facilitators. I would go through all these either like the day before or a week before or some hours before, things that I've been studying over the last many years. So I'm still playlisting, and I'm very much still interested in the music, but I would rather go now into how would others uh, go into their own music production process, which still would, in fact, um, relate to how. Uh, what am I trying to do? It would still wonder how thought construction takes place inside your own participants. Okay, because knowing that if you just are like facilitating and your participants are only laying down, you're not doing good for them if all you're doing is facilitating them over long periods of time. There needs to, in fact, be a limit to the amount of times people lay down without accessing um, like knowledge. You can't just do them. They can't just be done upon. They need to, at a certain point, stand up. And this is something we've honored ever since, like people who are interested and they would want to know, not just do. And there has to be a metacognition, which for me is cognitive resonance. Without metacognition, without consciousness becoming conscious of itself, then there would be dissonance there, no matter how blissed out people are, basically. So go back forward. So I'm interested in these new possibilities. Like koala for me is interesting because as a sampler, there's something very light languagey about it. There's something that allows us, me, you, to be able to to conduct this thing, which would then access like higher forms of intelligence, whether it be, thinking about images or sound units, morphemes, phonemes. That's what light language is about. And your ability to recombine words is your ability to paraphrase in your own words, which would mean that you basically are understanding what you're studying through thought construction, not thought deconstruction, basically. So having said that, I want to move then to it, and I can't basically use my iPad. I need to actually move to my laptop. So just give me 10 seconds to do that. The reason, oh, quiet. Okay, I think that's fine. The reason for that being I can't somehow the iPad doesn't like broadcast the Logic Pro and Koala when I do Zoom. It starts to be dysfunctional. So what I need to do, I could probably log out of this one already. Let's see, I'll leave. Um I can only do a screen share. Um so yeah, normally I don't even use my MacBook anymore. So let me see. Let's share the screen and make sure there is a sound. And let me know if there's a problem with the sound. Okay, so all right. So let me then move to my iPad and hope it works well. I hope you can hear me. I'm on my extended microphone. Okay, so welcome to Koala. Let me create a new file. Or just to make sure there's a sound, I sometimes need to do that. Okay, so all right, so it's basically a sampler, a sequencer, and a performance engine. And I really love it. Like I can open the mic, make sure everything's working out. This is headphone monitoring. And this is like an effects section, basically. So I'll shut it down. So basically I have these pads. Okay, something weird's happening. So if I press one of these red squares, like now, let's say hello, and then I press the pad again. Hello, hello. I have these. So I can be walking around the workshop space, basically just recording people laughing or screaming or talking out loud, and I can insert that easily into the session already. Um, So there are many things I could do with this that's quite synonymous with what we would do with DJ Pro. Like okay, before that. Um so if you count how many squares are there, oh, what are you doing? Um I recorded myself. Let's see what I did there. Um uh, okay, I'm in trouble because I don't know. I need to restart. I'm sorry. I don't know how to unselect those sometimes. Um, or let me just make a new one. I'm still studying it, by the way. Um, so if you see the letters at the bottom, A, B, C, and D, if you open the noise app and you open one of the noises, what you have are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You have like 10 sliders. And sometimes these are actually just mirroring each other. So when you keep adding to that, and you have about five of those, you have like 50. So in koala, if you count how many boxes there are here, there's like 16. There's 16, right? Eight per row. Eight times two is 16. And you have four, basically four sections. So 4 times 16 would be about 64. So you actually have a lot more slots here than the noise app in general. So it can act as a noise app engine. And you can load up like almost any sound. You could be walking around. Like one thing I can do as an example is I can put up a noise and say, let me get rid of this and just stick to a drone. And then I go back to koala and I would just press and hold red pad. And then just stop that. Press and hold red pad. Oh, sorry. Why did that? Okay, that's weird. It normally records the noise and not just, let me try that again. I didn't get it. I think it could be because I'm streaming, but normally it gets it very easily. All right, so I'll just delete this for now. And then let me
Press and hold.
delete that. I want to do some demos then on how we've been using this in Maya. So let's say I'm kind of bored and I don't want to shop around in the built-in samples that are already kind of there, which should, for example, be if I'm looking for a drum sound, um, could be something like that. I could have a drum sound there. Let's say I wanted to use my own voice because I wanted to be like an independent being, not reliant on what is recorded there. I'd just say the word boom.
Boom.
So I have like a my own drum sound there, and I can edit that sound so that
Boom.
the starting point
Boom.
could either be late or
Boom.
early, and the end point as
Boom.
well. I can
Boom.
adjust. So let's say I wanted to um,
Boom.
just put these together. I would make like
Boom. Boom.
uh,
Boom.
a sound that has both of these just combined, and I
Boom.
can just now get rid of this. And then say I wanted to come up with a hi-hat or a snare, I would just maybe snap my fingers. Okay, so I need to edit this now. It was amazing because we basically demonstrated this for about 10 minutes to a group of 20, and we just set them off, and they downloaded the app, and next thing you know, they were already constructing their own music super excitedly. So this is let's say that's a kind of snare that I'm making my own. So when I move to the sequence, one way of using this is I can record one sequence. So you have these boxes here at the top. All right. You have like 8 there, and then I have like 2, 3, 4. So 8 times 4 would be I can make as much as 24 sequences, and I can control how long the sequence would be. So let's say if the sequence in the beginning would be short, like a one loop.
Boom. 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 Boom.
So if I
Boom.
wanted to make that longer, and
Boom.
then I could just
Boom.
make that longer here.
Boom. 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 Boom.
Okay, so let's say I have that now, then I could easily
Boom.
put like
Boom.
other song elements. I'm not sure how well my voice would be now, but let's say just sing or chant like oh,
Oh.
then I can just put that over or on top of this thing that I had recorded.
Boom. Boom. Oh. Oh. Boom. Boom. Boom.
Okay, I'm just pressing it over. It doesn't need to sound good because I'm just really doing a demonstration. Okay, so that's one way of using this easily. If you're bored in an airport or in, you're in the tube, the subway, and you wanted to make a song from all the sounds around. I want to treat this like a DJ app. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import an audio. I found something interesting here that I was playing with on the spot. Like I literally just saw it and it felt fun to use this one. So I'll load a particular song and it sounds basically like this. Um, and I can just go forward if I wanted to jump to a particular place. So I'm using this particularly as I had used this in the past. This is part of my playlist a long time ago. If I wanted this to loop, then I could just press loop. If I wanted it to just sing in reverse, then so more or less people might be recognizing the song, but they are in fact like not. So one interesting thing I would like to do is to split the stems. For you to be able to access this, once you download this, if this is something that interests you, you would need to purchase it. It's super duper cheap. I forgot how much we were purchasing it, but there's a samurai edition where you pay $2, I think, or is it $4 in order to be able to do this thing that I'm about to do. So I'm gonna split the stems, and I need to just wait a little bit. So what it's gonna do right now is I now have the song separated as vocals, drums, bass, and all the other artifact sounds. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to delete the original track because I don't want the familiarity it comes with. So as you can see, this is really just a section. It's not the whole song. I really just wanted to experiment with the uh oh wow, I reversed it. So I guess if I reverse it, I get the original. All right. So why I like this more than the noise app is it gives me more control over what I'm normally used to and a lot of the other music apps. So for example, I can control the speed. If I lower the pitch, then I can slow it down and I can speed it up. That's something I couldn't do in the noise app, and I've always wanted that. Um, so I'm gonna demonstrate something else in a little while, but let's make sure everything else is working fine. So that's the kind of drum. But if I was to demonstrate, let's say, something that we could do that is something else, then I would maybe look for other tracks that would be combining this with um, maybe this one has a drum track that I would be interested in. So let's just I think to save space, let's just shorten it. I'm not even gonna measure it. I'm just gonna go anywhere and let's go ahead and split the stems, but I don't want the vocals. There's no vocals there. I like the bass line, so I'll retain that. And then all the others I'll just leave off. So I'll keep the drums because that's what I'm looking for here. Split that. And then I can't do anything while waiting. So now what we're doing is we're waiting and I'm just making conversation while we're waiting. Now it's done. So let me get rid of that original track. So what I have now would be the drum beat here. You can see when I press it, it's not playing. It's because I need to press edit. And either I press one shot which means it would just play once. If I wanted to make it loop over and over again, either ping pong would be back and forth. Um, I would just press hold. But because it's kind of long already, I think one shot is okay. So when I press drums, it would just do it on its own, and I can just make adjustments of slowing it down, lowering the sound, or speeding it up. And all right, so to make it stop, I need to press one shot. So either I can use a sequencer or not. I'm pretty happy just to stay within the sample section. And I'm gonna say I don't actually want the original drum sound from the Dionne Warwick song. So I will just keep the drum part for this one. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import some interesting audio that Francois, who comes from the inner dance community in France, who's been staying with us for the last months. He's been working out these really amazing tracks using his modular synthesizers. So just to add layers, I don't know what these are, but he's done a fantastic job, and he's gonna be sharing these to you as hacks so that you can they're very much inner dance, friendly. So let's say I would love to use something like that, because those are the kinds of stuff that I look for myself. I find it too loud, so I'm gonna reduce this volume to just become sort of ambient or atmospheric. So basically, I think everything is one shot. Let me see. This should be one shot. Vocals. Okay. Let's make all of it one shot. I'm going to demonstrate the light language part. I haven't gotten to that yet. This is a bit loud. Drums, one shot. Other, one shot. Bass, one shot. Let's check out what the bass sounds like. I guess it's okay. Maybe around there. And then just make that loop, right? That'd be nice. All right. So here's where the light language part would come in. So when I play this, it just sounds like the vocal. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break this apart. So I'm going to press the tool section, and I'm gonna press an auto chop. Now, what this is doing is it's basically subdividing the chosen track into different subdivisions in the areas the divisions would make the most sense. They would be where there are strong starting or ending points. I don't want long vocalizations, so this is going to be a lot when I press chop. All right. That's okay because I can just, let's say, okay, sorry. I could just go shopping and maybe remove the things that I don't want if it's just taking up too much space. So I press edit, and then I can just slide my finger over the others so I can easily just delete all those. Go back. Let me show you what they sound like and how this becomes a kind of light language thing. So they're basically like short versions. And over here, meaning if I wanted to use that as a drum part even, I could record maybe about something 8 bars long. Let's put the drum in. Wait, go back and then edit one shot. And then, okay, let's have that going on. Go back to the sequence. And then I could just play. I could just play. Let's say, put the I didn't mean to play this long one because I couldn't control it from this sequence. But you get what I mean. If I was having more time, I'd probably just reduce like all these. Let me just do that now. So they're not overpowering what I'm playing with. I don't know if this is a good example, but when we were playing with it, like it just seemed so fun to light language Dionne Warwick. Back to sequence. Um, I think it starts somewhere. Mm, it's a bit too low, but yeah, you get the point. Okay, so I'm gonna stop that, and I'm going to talk about what could make this valuable or powerful. If you open the main menu, I can basically save this as a file. And let's say if I wanted to work in a theme where I have A, B, C, and D, and these would be made up of songs and noises and samples and my voice saying something like um don't be afraid to die,
Don't be afraid to die.
stuff like that. um then I can send it to you, even as you can send me yours. So let's say I built a theme on like what is time, or what are you afraid of, or where is your trust, or like how do you construct a thought, like just possible themes, like going back to Africa. What I love about it is you can import from your drive. And I'm literally just using my iPad now. You can use your iPhone. And what we were so frustrated about in the past is the five simultaneous sounds in my noise used to only work in Apple products like iOS, iPhones, or iPads. Koala will work on like everything basically, so that when you're able to access your files, um it could be like the my file section, it could be your iCloud. And I really love that, like it's in the drive and you can have this tagging process. So when you build the playlist like here with the color based tags, you can probably rename those, or just do your categorizations there, so you're not overwhelmed when you keep building on possible yeah, possible elements. But what I really love is that you can definitely just wait, why are you not closing? Yeah, okay. And then once you're done recording your sequence, let's see, let's put some samples just on. uh it, and this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then the perform button would be just okay, I'll let you figure that out. And it's got a it's got the Ableton section in. So let's say if I make sure that where is that? It should be in MIDI. If my Ableton link is on, so now it's on. Um, when I do a sequencing, you know how the BPM can be controlled, like you can slow it down or speed it up. So let's say I'm going with 126. Pretty much this is what you can't do with the noise app. Like if you look at my tempo here, it's also 126 because I have in my settings the Ableton link enabled, which should still be the same with my audio kit synth 1. Sorry, I didn't actually want you on. Go away. Okay, I need to shut that down. um, Shut down. But you get the point that there could be these tempo cross-referencing where the BPM is concerned. So I feel this might change things. I'm quite inspired by this. Um, I, I I would still use my noise probably, and I would probably stick to the new version. So I'm channeling the new participants and not like you can go ahead and use this if you're not like having to focus on training new people. But I would probably just be using using this alongside this because they still work together basically. Um, so that if I am more or less still able to talk about the image schemas and the spatial primitives, then um, I'm still able to hold something quite crisp and clear. I'm still able to delineate particular trigger mechanisms. So at one point, I could literally just press stop on the koala and just move on. Okay, so I think that's it. Um, I wish I made like better sounds to demonstrate because I really had fun with it and it sounded really good. Right now, it sounded very crappy, but I guess you get the point. I really want to hear people bring their own sounds into the spaces and be able to chop up, uh, you know, what you can collect from the earth and do interesting stuff with them. I'm generally interested in energy people going into music production. Um, Wait, I think it's still quite interesting to do a screen share on this point because this is our last lecture, at least for this year. Um, it's still quite nice to think from a visual perspective. Is it opening? Yes. All right. So my usual problem with this guy is he doesn't stop moving. To find out how to make him stop. All right. Um, so musicians generally have thicker corpus callosums and also arcuate fasciculus. I think the plural would be corpus callosi or arcuate fasciculi. Just sound better. They probably would have a thicker fornix and possibly a thicker cingulum. Um, and these are because these are white matter structures. They're basically myelinated. Then they're not just going to thicken for the sake of thickening. Just by listening to music, it doesn't mean that it's going to get thicker, primarily because when you're not doing things structurally, what will thicken would be the gray matter areas. It would be the cortical regions. If you wanted the communication to um, like speed up and to go further across the brain regions on the outer layer, the new brain, and the inner layer, the old brain. Learning music is a really amazing way to establish interconnectivity either between the contralateralized brain hemispheres or the different brain regions. Like, for example, the arcuate fasciculus interconnects the Broca's and the Wernicke's area, which are both responsible for language production and language comprehension. Which is to say, if you learn how to produce music in this intuitive way, your ability to speak and your ability to listen to others will improve. exponentially, primarily because music has linguistic properties and language has musical properties because they evolve together. But that language, music is a lot more non-linear because it's non-verbal. So I feel for children, for adults, whatever your occupation, I feel building a relationship with like sound structures would help you make sure that even as you fire up like so much brain areas that you are also containing those wirings, that they're not too expensive, that you are able to prune out effectively. Bottom line being, there's learning happening, because when it's like randomized, when it's just sheer explosion for the sake of doing that, the inner dance in its earlier forms, which is how it's also transferred to other modalities, it's very effective in the unlearning process. So I find it to be a responsible thing whenever facilitators would undergo the selection combination processes that could be entailed. Let's say in Spotify, it's still happening. It's just happening on a very, very basic level. When you move to the noise, the DJ Pro, it's happening on a much more complex level. Still simple though, because it's still song based. Then when you go into the noise app, it's a deeper and complex level, but it's still too easy. There are many limitations there where you cannot, in fact, control the tempo. You can't. Um, so I find that the sampler, such as Koala, mirrors how the brain works a lot more. So don't be overwhelmed if you feel that, okay, that's interesting, but it looks complicated. We can have more workshops around this. We can develop like really cool community-based laboratories where if you wanted to learn how to use this alongside, let's say, a synthesizer app or the noise app or still Spotify, we can just explore this together. I feel this would change a lot of the work that is ongoing into the next year. I only discovered it some weeks ago. I only started to play with it like this morning. I was tinkering with it in the car while I'm picking up the kids from school sometimes. But really only learned to use it today, and it really excited me. Um, so the challenge or the limits the new noise app gave, which was a crisis for me, it actually forced me to look at other means, and it suddenly just became like not boring again, because I'm not just relying on someone else's recordings of sounds. I'm becoming more and more interested now in capturing the actual sounds of the world, and oh, actually, like something that would be cool to demonstrate. This one's worth it. Um, am I sharing the sound? Yes, I am. So let me go back to Koala. Um, okay, so come up with a sample. Say just my voice, like mm. So I could access it through here in sequence. And you see this thing that looks like a keyboard. Basically, if I choose this sound, then I can play it. I can play that sound that I just made like a keyboard. Then I can change the scale. So this is, it's basically a piano. It doesn't sound good because I just said that. But if I wanted an actual I don't know, an actual thing, and then I wanted to make that the piano. Just yeah. So yeah, that's it. Um, that part's fun. So I think Koala, as far as I know, is the number one sampler engine in the world when it comes to these types of things. So I was suggesting it. So okay, so that's pretty much it for me. It is 3 o'clock, so I did take up quite a bit of time, almost 2 hours. So it's our last lecture call. I would love to just say hi and see how you're doing. If you have any questions related to this call, that could be interesting. Um, if you would like to talk about these practical, interesting tools, then you could go into that as well. Because I think we are craving to like let's get to work. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's just there's so much already in terms of substantiation for what this work can hold. If you are conducting interesting projects or programs, which I know is happening around the world, this can be your chance to update people because some of these programs are very indigo, like the morning talks in Belgium. There have been ongoing trainings as well. There was one in Mexico with Fanny, Sophie, and Ahilan did one in Bornem in Belgium. Some of you might have had as well, and we're undergoing this particular one in Maya. So I'm happy for you guys to take over. Okay, Benedict, and then Brendan.
Hi, thanks for showing this very nice app. I must say it's quite exciting. It invites to start playing, actually, even more than the other ones, I feel. Maybe a very practical question, as I have this mind still in categories. I was starting to play a little bit now in sessions with DJ Pro and My Noise, combining both. And then so in my head it was like DJ Pro and My Noise is for live playlisting, and like Ableton or Logic Pro are to construct a full playlist, not live. Do you see Koala then also replacing Ableton or Logic Pro, or just producing parts that can be used into, or is it just too early to know? Maybe
You can record the song on Koala. You don't need my suggestion for all of you or us is an iPad would still be the most powerful tool, really. Because a phone is normally too small. So I would suggest to all of you not to strongly suggest if it's too much for you to take on. But an iPad isn't really that expensive. I feel if you want to value the work and invest in something, get a nice iPad, and then you can there's Logic Pro in the iPad if you wanted to go that route. I feel that learning any platform isn't really just about the output. When I am learning something, I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it because of the process, because it helps my brain to grow. Learning the musical apps actually helps me to understand the materials that I'm uncovering. It gives the insights and the study material sort of mirror, a platform for understanding itself. So I'm glad that you're looking at the options that are live, which would be DJ Pro, it would be the Noise app, and now Koala. And then I'm glad you're bringing up the studio-based elements, which is more space-oriented. And Koala, because of if you guys want to see it, it has the record option very easily. There's a button on the side. Um, Basically, it's here. These three lines, and then here, like record song, and then it acts like a DAW, like a DAW. It acts as a digital audio workstation, which is what the studio-based Logic Pro and Ableton are.
And
So
uh, yeah, and the MacBook would not do the same as an iPad.
MacBook I find clumsy in the workshop space. What I like about an iPad, if you're connected to Bluetooth technology, you can carry it around the whole room. A MacBook is
Yeah.
really awkward to carry around. Even when you're moving around cafes and the office and the home, the iPad is a really portable thing. My iPad is an iPad Pro, and the engine is an M4 silicon chip, which is actually more advanced than what you can find in any MacBook. So my iPad is
Mm.
faster than a MacBook.
Mm. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then because you said it's since playing music changes the brain,
Mhm.
and since we shouldn't just have people lie down,
Mm.
is it then to evolve also to
Mm.
get people to play with music in workshops?
Uh, it's like a chain. I think people need to play with bodies first. So when you have strong participants, then you can start to invite them later on to help hold the room. That allows you to expand the amount of people that you are able to hold. It also engenders community. Later on, people will ask for more understanding, and then you can, in fact, establish a small training process. That excites me because when I think of you, I think of, let's say, Bridget from South Africa, and I'm thinking of this psychiatrist who's here as well in Maya. He's an Egyptian who grew up in New York City, and he's going to be applying this work for his patients, his clients, just like Bridget's doing this work with her clients in South Africa. So I think it would be interesting for practitioners who are also in the in medical field to discover what would be the particular parameters of, let's say, teaching this to your own clients later on. I think it does give more independence. I wouldn't teach them the I wouldn't teach them the koala. I would teach them the noise app if there were parents, if there were patients, if there were institutions. I think if it was a school, I would be very interested to teach the students koala. That would be one of the best teaching tools if you wanted them to use music or sound as a learning device. It would be one of the most powerful things to teach kids how to construct songs just using the sounds around us. Or sampling is something that is really heavily used in the music industry, like hip hop, dance music. They would basically start to train their ears to listen for amazing music that you can find in, let's say, classical, old songs, and then you extract that super easily now. Like the kinds of machines that did what I just demonstrated, they used to be super expensive, tens of thousands of dollars, euros, and they took up like a big room, from the time of the Beatles, and like Queen or Pink Floyd. It took like entire rooms to be able to sample like that. Now it's become so small and it costs nothing in order to create music, which I think is the most natural thing, not just to construct a sentence, but to construct a song. There's something quite fulfilling about it. The other thing that is the main difference between a MacBook and an iPad is I'm so used to my iPad, so what I'd be doing is touching my screen and my MacBook, and I'd remember I can't do that. I can't control the screen, but so I hardly use my MacBook because if we're using this for inner dance, the medium needs to be tactile. It needs to be interactive, and the what do you call this? The mouse, no, the trackpad and the keyboard just aren't so tactile. It's more too logical. It's too German. I need something a little bit more messy that allows me to express my intuition. Yeah, great. Okay. Fanny.
Hi. Um, this is amazing. I'm so happy. I feel excited. And so when you talked about like what was happening with my noise, I actually skipped a lot of messages like 2 weeks ago, right before the training in Mexico. And then I just saw like, okay, we're not using my noise anymore, or like not we're not, but like there's yeah, this discrepancy between both. So I entered the training being like, okay, so what to teach now with the music if they cannot use it? So I still presented my noise because for me, I think I'm attached to it. It's such an amazing app, and I do have access to the old version, so it's really great. But then in the training, I was like, okay, we can, download and use the sounds in DJ Pro, and like kind of like finding the way to work around this or just use the new version of my noise, and then hopefully eventually they're going to have again the five time 10 sliders uh possible.
They
And I
will. They
just
will not.
opened.
He's not going to
They
do it.
won't.
At the very
Okay,
most,
I
it's
thought
gonna
it
be
would.
two. No, he said no.
Okay, I thought it would be an eventual like update of the app. Okay, good to know. So I felt a little bit like, where are we going with this? Because it's kind of like a big base of the music we hold. And I just opened now the Koala app. And while you were playing, I also recorded sounds and I was playing with it. And I'm really amazed because it feels to me that this is like the circuit track, like the gadget, like the physical circuit track mixed with like the Novation pad from Ableton. So like it's kind of like a mix of both, and this is what I was looking for, but on a physical hardware possibility. And so like yeah, I'm really happy to get to know more how it works, and the effects are really amazing. Like the sound that I recorded are totally different into the end, and I just played with it 5 minutes at the same time. So I'm really amazed by this. On a trainer's perspective, I feel it's kind of intense to teach this or to share this, because the people that I shared it with were already kind of like feeling overwhelmed with like just how a playlist is working, like the 12 stages, the sleep cycle, um, the DJ Pro and my noise, like it was already too much. So I'm just trying to see like what would be a way maybe that we start with my noise or we start with DJ Pro as well, but we introduce maybe the koala with already sampled things so they can start just,
Mm.
like 3, 4 options or like something simpler, so it can, because it's easier to understand when you already have some knowledge of music and of playlisting or
We just did
experience.
koala. Like we didn't even cover the others because it was redundant already, and that's what
So
made
you
it
went
easier for
directly.
yeah. On
Hmm.
day 8, where there's just so many
Okay.
explanations as well as to what in music triggers the brainwaves. Yeah.
And were you using samplers already or just like
It
recording live?
I demonstrated everything that I demonstrated here in a much quicker way, and they were all every single one was playing with it already. They all have their own songs already by now. So
Okay.
if they're not in a hurry, I'm even suggesting to them, just you can even keep the volume low if you're insecure, and then you can play with it on top or underneath a Spotify playlist. And they found that like so friendly to do. So the resistance is very low. There's something about this app that's so exciting for people compared to the other ones that seems even more overwhelming. They seem to really catch on to it very fast. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's user friendly, and it has a playful side to it. So people are just willing to like play with it. And it's like when we were using my noise at the beginning, we were putting a playlist in the background and then using my noise on top
There,
to
there's
like add
almost
on.
something about it that it teach it to you, or no, teach it to yourself. There's something very self-learning
Hmm.
that you end up teaching yourself how to use it once you know even just the basics. Yeah. I want to hear about your training in Mexico with Val. How did that go?
It went super well. It was very interesting, like the amount of openness and absorption, and how people were like, okay, a lot overwhelmed by the amount of information. That's for sure. It's always present because it's condensed in like 4 days. So there's kind of like wanting to go deeper for sure. And it's interesting to observe also the shift between like what is known from before and kind of like the transition or the path opening up to inner dance a bit more, and how the different shift in paradigms are being held also, and how it's being brought up in like each things that we share, each information that we share is holding the paradigm. And so there was always this comparison between two things. And I felt like for me, it was not about like bringing one more than another, but more giving the choice. So this is a paradigm, and this is what the system of interpretation of this paradigm is holding, related to like Kundalini or transmission or things like this. And this is the other paradigm that inner dance is holding, related to resonance, related to like removing the hierarchy, and all of this. So it's just to see more possibilities than what is held, and people just had the ability to choose what they want, and then have the freedom from that. So I think for me, I really began the training related to what is interesting today, unlearning. Like, what does it mean to unlearn to be able to learn again? And that brought us to understand what is a system of interpretation, and how a system of interpretation is allowing us to just become the observer and look at systems. And when people in the space were sharing or questioning, I was just again being like, what's that system about? Is the system supportive or not? Is the system bringing more freedom or constraining? Like, when is the system actually expanding or containing and reducing? And so like when we want to be into like a state of expansion, and I'm not creating a hierarchy here, but more like infinite possibilities, we need to allow ourselves to see and observe what is the system that I'm holding, to be able to go beyond the system. And so like looking at things from a systems perspective allowed people not to take things personally, and to really detach personally their own identity to the belief system they were holding inside. And this allowed them, I think, to shift their perspective or their paradigm quite quickly. So it was very, very good, very interesting. And there were also some very overwhelmed by the music, but some were like already next to me and DJing with me, and I passed the iPad and I was like, now you have your 10 minutes like golden star moment. And it was just fun to see, like, like how they observe and how they were closer to the body, and how they were just like really listening from the body, not just from the like ears. And so like observing how the energy, how the body speaks, how the conversation is being held between the bodies, and how this is bridging also the spaces. So yeah, it was very interesting, and a big shift also in the paradigm of what was held for them in the past.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear. Anything from Mexico is interesting, because yeah, it's like really exploding over there. So it's really beautiful to have something anchored. All right. Anyone else would like to share anything from this Indigo week, and or the app, or anything happening in your inner dance universe?
Yeah, I would like to share.
Mm.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm right now here in Belgium at Sophie's place with two kids. Yeah, we held a session last week, and I played around with koala also a bit. while using the existing playlist or my noise, etc. But I didn't even open Koala before. I just opened middle in the session and like, okay, everything was happening in my iPad, and I like, okay, let's play around. Can I add some noise there? And then can I move it around? And that was really interesting. I have it's like you have Audacity, you have DJ app, and you have My Noise together in one, and you can even edit while you are you are like live playing. You can shop out stuff. You can really reverse it, and you can do everything within those one app. Of course, it's a lot of functions, and it's you need to get used to it. But at the end, we know that in a dance, also you cannot do that much wrong. There's no so that's why it's really when you feel it and when your body is moving and you are not if there's no wanting, it's really like it's something happening through your body. It's beautiful to see how uh, we can use it. I'm still looking into how we can actually use as a um, or if it's even possible to use it as a only app, or if you know maybe something on as a background. That would be interesting to see. And there was really interesting feedback coming back because I was sampling just a little part of the song um, from from the 90s, and it's really like a very very little part. And there were three people who could recognize this part because I was repeating it and it was speeding up, and then everything was Koala, and then they came back and they had really this beautiful memory of this song, and but it was so insane to see that even a little chopped mm, second, your memory is connected, and your brain is connected to the memory, and you can recognize everything. So that was so simple to create. Um, yeah, that's something to say that I think it's a playful tool for us to explore and to find out how it works. Mm,
You're actually the first of us in the world to have tried it out. You beat us to it. So it's really good. Good that it worked out inside the church.
and Benedict was also present in the session when he had it a day later. Yeah, it's good to and Shana also from the 1 year training.
Mm.
Yeah, and the training was really also um, very interesting. Like we are in Belgium, and suddenly in this Belgium space, there are people who are there who are really interested into knowledge, and they are like scientific approach is welcomed. And they came to inner dance, and I think 3 or 4 people just registered in the last two weeks for the training, and they said like, oh, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this, but I saw also in your post or in your description something about scientific explanation and something about the knowledge sharing, and that's why we registered compared to other modalities. And um, we felt like within this 3 days, it's really hard to bring all what we want to bring. It's almost every time it feels like, oh my God, I want to unload everything, and then but then whatever it is need to be there, it is there. We still use the mandala in a way to organize the 3 days. Um, and this just 1 week passed, and the feedback we get is, wow, the way how I am talking to my children is different. The way how I conduct my work is different, and even like some spiritual works, which are giving some protocols, how you have to do one-to-one things. Just after being exposed to the knowledge and some sessions, there's already a shift. There's nothing more than that it need to be happen. So that was really interesting to observe in this space in Belgium. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. I'd like to invite Sophie, but the what interests me the most is the breakfast talks because it's the most indigo probably the most indigo project happening if it's not a training, and it helps to hold the color well. How many breakfast talks have you done and how is it doing? Maybe you can give a brief description of what that even is, if, in case like others haven't heard of what you're doing.
Hi. Oh, I'm hearing my echo.
No.
No, not anymore. Okay, better. I'm going to turn up the volume here. So the breakfast talks we introduced here in Belgium because I realized at a certain point that I was like one of the people that could go through a big process only by words or by knowledge. So I was thinking maybe I can offer the same thing to people who do not come to regular sessions, like elder people or people who are not really searching for a spiritual experience. So based on that, we organized Hilde from the Lotuspoort, the Abbey, where we're holding also the training. We organized the breakfast talks, and we held until now 3 breakfast talks, and now there's 2 weeks we are holding the training. So last weekend was the training, and tomorrow we start a new training. And but in December it's going to be followed up. People, I told you, and the community doesn't know yet, I think, but there's one particular person who is not spiritual at all. She was drawn to the breakfast talks with her husband. And after the first breakfast talk, she was the one like trembling. And the second breakfast talk she was opening, and the third breakfast talk she told me that she was in a kind of aphasia. So it does make me realize that here it's that I'm not the only one, and that there's something to do with the words that we are speaking, or the knowledge to enter into the trust of our own process. So I'm really excited to keep on doing that. There's also, and I'm happy that Avi is in the call too, and Benedict, because they're thinking to do the same thing on the other side of the country. They're living like 1 hour, 1.5 hours away from Bornhem. And they were thinking about doing it. And I think they're like real plans now that they're going to start doing it, hopefully in 2025. So this is growing, this indigo part.
I think it could start a wildfire. It could inspire other communities as well. Maybe after this, within Studios Mundos, there could be a special group. Need to figure out what color it belongs to, but I think as a model, like what's her name? South Africa. She wanted to do it as well. She started her
And
training to
Caroline
do it already.
also, I don't know if she's on the call, but Caroline from Scotland, she also wants to do it. Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, super indigo. Yeah, okay, amazing. Does anyone else want to share? Reflect? Ask a question? So in general, we're looking towards the next year. Those who want to collaborate to keep on studying, we're making the process a lot simpler. We're open to ideas as well, so we can hold like meetings ahead, but we do have particular frames already prepared. So for those who are part of the 1 year, those who want to continue, there will be 3-month cycles, and we will make it as easy as possible, almost next to nothing for people to be part of that. For those who are going to be facilitating and holding space, you can become like a collaborator, which is what Fanny Ahlan, Tom, you know, Sophie, that's what we were doing all this time throughout this 1 year. And this could be a way that participants could access the lectures where you yourself would be holding your own talk somehow with your own group. So maybe this can happen within a country level where there could be several subgroups, and then there could be like a main core that's helping to hold like everything. So we've slowly been veering into that, and we ourselves, we are always receiving many inquiries and emails. It's really more a matter of trying to coordinate ourselves, because I sort of want to reduce my teaching load so I can move my energy towards a little bit more research, be with the kids, and we're going to be traveling to Europe next year. We did something very interesting for this particular training, if I can talk a little bit about it. We haven't gone into it because there's some level of expense on like accessing a particular program for the EEG devices that we have in Maya. They're quite expensive. It costs us, I don't know if it goes up to $200 a month, but we 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 purchased it for the month for this particular training, and it was Francois and Gra who were running the the sessions. So we had very controlled um, um, conditionings or stimuli for all of the participants. And the readings were more or less just 20 minutes. The recordings are really amazing. And now we have also raw data. It's very encouraging. So early as it may be, it really does seem feasible that like you yourselves, the communities can like perform this in each location. I haven't had a chance to observe what's happening inside. They were doing it inside this room. Actually, I haven't been using the what used to be the studio. It's now more or less like a place where people can do calls. But they transformed this small room into an EEG room, and using the recordings of the modulars, and he would put some songs there. You can more or less sort out where the jumps are in regards to particular brain waves, and isolating it where we have more or less like 14 sensors, left, right. We could choose which particular gyrus or Broadband areas we could focus on that could be more or less like connected with inner dance. So I think that's actually like a really exciting thing. So if you're interested in that, we'll probably collate the the data first and put that into a document so that you can consider this might be interesting. Not the data per se, but like you yourself or the community around you doing these experimentations. We bought the EEGs a long time ago, and we were using more the basic apps that help you to visualize like the whole brain in a 3D schematic. But I think we were waiting for this right time when we're more spacious, and the trainings are a great, set of controls. We have another one coming up in December. It's mostly actually for families. Parents are bringing their kids in January, February, March. We have the next one, so we'll experiment some more. But I'm really happy. It's really encouraging. I was in fact like duly impressed by what they've done. So we can bring that up in Studios Mundos, which is what I think we should start carrying people over to Studios Mundos. Now, before I open the call to last, contributions, so we have basically like a closing call. It would still be for both time slots, just to make things easier for people in Oceania or Asia and the Americas, and for Europe, it's still going to be this particular Thursday. Sophie, when is that date again? I forget. I
The
think it's in
11th and
December.
the 12th of December.
Okay, so it would be December 12th for this time slot then.
Yes.
Same time, yeah, the Thursday night. So that one is going to be community led. So I'm speaking this not just for those who are here, but those who are going to be watching the recording. I will not speak anymore. I've been doing all these calls and I'm so happy I can finally have a little bit of a break. My family is coming for Christmas. Johanna is arriving some days from now already with the two kids from Finland, and so we're super excited about that. Um, so these calls will be an amazing way for all of you, for all of us to witness. We've never done this before, like really stretching out an inner dance conversation for a whole year has been rather like a feat. It's an achievement because we stuck with it. There was a very careful set of coherences between the different topics that really built up towards this point. If given 6 hours to 10 hours, I would actually have gone on to go into the cognitive sciences, the mind-body problem, and but then we'd run out of things to think about and talk about into the next year. I think it's really fun to do this already because there's so much information there. But I really do feel that we did a good job, that there are many of us, of you, who really stuck it out. And I do know that a lot of people watch the recorded calls, even though they can't make it live. So it feels like we have helped the movement just by paying attention and holding this much both sacred and like physical grounding, like grounding the inner dance energy into the earth, into possible ways of explicating this into application, like really translating this in ways that would be very interesting for institutions. And we couldn't have done it without like all of us. Something that was really just a question mark. I remember last year, I really was experiencing some levels of anxiety. Like, can it be done? I was super excited back then. Right now, I'm actually just tired, but in a very productive, tired way. Like I feel like I just gave birth because the first months I was stressing out more on how to extend topics that normally we would just glance upon, which really allowed me to extend my own brain. I really had to, I would say this year really helped me to organize my own brain, my own mind. And the calls that we have done, they will be there for perpetuity. I think we might change the setting to make it more private. Um, not the unlisted. It's already quite private. We'll probably relegate it to a private setting, and those who have been part of the calls, then the 1 year, then you'll be given access to that. I don't even know if we're going to be publishing the calls for next year on YouTube. We'll probably do it in a more contained space. But yeah, just flowing with things now felt really good, and don't know if we'll ever do a 1 year again. What we'll be doing will be continuous 3-month cycles that would still cover the colors over 2-week intervals. Where no, sorry, month would be 2 colors per. So that's 3-month cycles of repeating yet never repeating the same topic. This would allow us to go a lot deeper into certain things that wouldn't loop. We wouldn't go into generalizations anymore. I think a community that's studying together would advance into being able to hold certain topics that are not either redundant or interdependent with the other topics. That, like anyone walking in, doesn't matter if they took up any of the other talks, like that would be a standalone, independent explication of a part that contains the whole. So anyone interested in what the movements are going to be next year, just write our Christina Angel, who is here in Maya, and she's ready to receive inquiries. Before that, I think it's just good to rest and to take a deep breath and to congratulate like yourself for your passion, your interest, your sense of wonder, and just also within Indigo forward, wonder how much have you grown? Yeah, understanding that inner dance in the blue we were talking about, inner dance is not something we're doing. It's not something abstract. It's a sentient being. It's alive, just like language is alive, just like the collective consciousness has its own autonomic intelligence. It's growing. It's taking in feedback. It's growing with this global feedback, and just you alone. Even though it doesn't seem like someone's studying your brain, I think the inner dance is right there, like growing with you. Um, so I think it would be good to take time out to observe, like what is neuroplasticity like? Because this is not the normal way of studying. This is really studying a spiritual transformation through the eyes of the scientific, along with as well as spiritual. It's just the kind of spiritual we don't do is the esoteric spirituality, which holds amazing space there. But what inner dance chooses is pretty much to land in the world, to allow the energy to inhabit the world. In the in our training in Maya right now, we make a difference between these religious terminologies that often go against each other. The word transcendence speaks about an understanding of the divine creator, God, as something outside or beyond the world. The um, idea or the terminology, the immanent, understands God as, or goddess, the divine creator, as something in the world, something that walks amidst or amongst us. And inner dance, I would say, is more of an immanent spiritual tradition. It may seem like a form of transcendence, which is going beyond, but we're not escaping, we're not alternating, we're not creating something alternative. What we're doing is something expansive to what is already there. Merely experiencing the same thing through a different lens, a different angle of vision. So, going into this topic of growth, what I would observe is how your language may not just be speech, it may not just be the vocabulary, but there's something about the way you resonate with um, how you're able to communicate with the being that rests in everyone. That seems like many, but it's really just a continuous being. There's continuity in that sort of language that's something speaking to itself, actually. Um, so I would observe that, like how are you, what is different right now in how you're speaking and listening and writing and reading that isn't really just about this 12-month course. Like everyone in the world is probably subject to change, and there have been recent big, say even geopolitical events that seems to harbor a very complex 2025 and beyond. So I think amidst those types of changes, there are also other types of changes that are happening between us and inside yourself. So that's the kind of you that I would love to witness and just to observe and learn from. So much is being given by the inner dance, really. Even just the experience itself is just unbelievable. The kinds of feedbacks we're getting around the world and how there are all these transformations. That's even without the understanding per se. So I would really be fascinated by the observation of what you're able to do with this, like inner dance at this time, particularly like inner dance at this point in the world's story. With everything else that's going on, I feel this is more and more, not just with the elections in the US and how, you know, how all these different sort of critical moments, these crisis points happening that will be happening in Europe, and the wars, the different wars and resource depletion, climate change. Um, I feel that there's something opportune in the way people are sleeping and not sleeping, trying to shift their diet. Like there's a lot of pilgrimage energy going around as well. Like people authentically looking for what is true in the age of super abundant information where you don't know what to listen to anymore because you just get different versions of the same thing. What would be meta enough, and where would you locate yourself in integrating the you know, the view of the world, or the worldview, which a lot of people are looking for. Like, what is a worldview that would be consistent and continuous? I think the most effective way to communicate with that is just through your being, not just what you're saying, but just to demonstrate how you're just happy and you're just solid and you're actually founded on strong anchors that, you know, like people would know if you value something, and if there was something there, and that means it's valuable, it's important, it's spending time on it, and when you offer it, that level of interest, integrity, and humility would be quite attractive for a lot of people. As you well know, here in Maya, we don't advertise anything. We literally just wait for people to write to us, and yet we're pretty much as busy as we can be, and we're even trying to reduce our activities. So all the more for you guys who are out there in the world, like in the front lines, we cannot belittle the importance of what might be out there. So receive the gifts that this 12 months has, as much as possible, given, like carefully, through sleepless nights and intense preparations, and make it your own. Once again, like paraphrasing, like how do you speak this in your own words that allows this energy to incarnate in a way that's going to hold novelty? It should never be repetitive. It should never be a reiteration of what, like, let's say what Pi speaks, or someone else. Okay, so that's my closing. That's my thank you, while I still have the words and I slowly give it over to the group. So just in the Indigo, is there anyone else who would like to add to what's already been spoken? And then I guess we can close soon. Okay, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Sophie. All right, anyone else? So I think we're good. We can just end this as we always do. Thank you, everyone. If you could unmute and say good night. And go ahead and play with Koala and show us your songs later. Bye, everyone.
Good night. Have a good
Bye.
sleep.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everyone.
Bye. Thank
Have a good dreams.
Sayonara. Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Cute.